Magicians are retarded. On today's video, I'm going to go over the death of the Amazing Joe. Now, I know I shouldn't speak ill of the dead. However, in this case, it's a perfect example of why magicians shouldn't do tricks that are legitimately dangerous. I've had several videos going over this exact same topic, talking about magicians performing feats that are legitimately dangerous, whether that's a Russian roulette style routine with acid or a trick that involves genuinely guessing which cup has a spike hidden underneath. However, today we're going to talk about the buried alive trick, more specifically the buried alive trick performed in 1990 by Joe Burrus. Now, Harry Houdini is a name that comes out a lot when it comes to looking up things about the buried alive trick because he did it and he almost died. And summarily, because of this particular trick and the infamy that it's gained, many magicians over the years have tried this, more recently including Dynamo in one of his more recent specials. However, seeing the behind the scenes that goes into Dynamo's shows, I can guarantee you that that trick was extraordinarily safe, which isn't the same for the Amazing Joe. Now, I'm going to say right off the bat that the majority of this information is coming from an article that I recently looked up from the Fresno Bee. So before you guys say, hey, look, Piggy's plagiarizing, I'm quoting it. I'm quoting the actual article. So in 1990, the Amazing Joe got an idea to perform the buried alive trick, something that he's done on a regular basis, something that he's practiced many times, however, with one noticeable difference. Now, Joe himself told the Fresno Bee that he believes that one day he'll become more famous than Harry Houdini. One of my favorite things from the article was the following quote that says, one of Burrus' signature tricks involved the classic buried alive stunt. The magician was handcuffed, chained, and locked inside of a clear coffin, which was then covered with 5 feet of dirt. Burrus practiced this trick countless times in front of his neighbor and frequently discussed the stunts with passerbys at job sites, the Bee reported. Now, I don't know about you, my friends, but I don't think practicing anything in front of your neighbor, even if it's countless times, amounts to anything valuable. However, there was a performance approximately 1 year before Joe Burrus died where he actually performed the trick successfully. Now, he did it in Oregon and he was covered by dirt. Again, I'm skipping one crucial aspect which ultimately led to his death on purpose. So one day he decided to perform the feat for a charity event at an amusement park. However, the one noticeable difference is that he instead decided to add wet concrete to the mixture of dirt. Wet concrete. He mentioned to a bystander that he would have to remove the handcuffs and the other things holding him down within 1 minute before the wet concrete is actually poured on the coffin. In the practice run, it took approximately 5 minutes for him to remove himself from the handcuffs and chains. So that very night, on Halloween in 1990, the year of my birth, he went on to perform the buried alive trick with wet concrete. At 9:30 p.m., he was chained and handcuffed and placed in the clear plastic coffin. His assistants then put approximately 3 feet of dirt and then started pouring wet concrete on top. Now, of course, I'd be remiss if at this point I didn't attempt to shill my own things, such as the PigCake Magic Academy, the home of over 1,600 videos going over card stuff, coin stuff, mentalism, everything you need to become the best magician you could possibly be. Now, if you don't like subscription models, I suggest to check out my brand new projects with Peter Turner. I have a couple fun ones, including one on the open prediction plot, as well as another one on the out of this world plot. They're available linked down below for your viewing pleasure. Enough of the attempt to try to pay my bills, here's the rest of the story. As soon as they finished pouring the concrete on top of the dirt, they heard a crack, and of course the plastic coffin had broken. Immediately, assistants went to pull him out from the grave. However, he was pronounced dead on the scene. Now, this goes back to the first sentence of this video, which is, magicians are retarded. I believe it was Penn Jillette of Penn & Teller that said magicians should never perform anything that is legitimately dangerous. And I agree wholeheartedly. There's no need for you to perform anything that is legitimately dangerous. There are always alternatives. There's always a way of doing anything that you put your little mind to safely without the risk of any harm. Now, every time he practiced this particular feat, he'd done it using just dirt. However, he thought that for the sake of this particular performance, it'd be more impressive if he did it with wet concrete. Now, the Fresno Bee did a little bit of math and they found that essentially the combination of dirt and wet concrete formed a mixture that weighed approximately 7 tons. Also more interesting that he made absolutely no attempt to find this out himself, nor try to figure out the weight that the plastic coffin could actually hold. As a matter of fact, the way that he would test the coffin is by jumping on it. This guy jumped on the coffin and said, yeah, that shit's gonna hold. Now, one of the worst things about this entire ordeal is that it was captured on TV. So potentially millions of people have seen this as one of the most dangerous feats in all of magic, and a perfect example as to why magicians should never actually perform anything that is legitimately dangerous. One of my favorite examples of this is a Russian roulette style routine where a magician would place a spike much like this underneath a cup or maybe inside of a paper bag. He would then place similarly weighted acrylic bases inside of the other bags and have the participants shuffle and mix them. At this point, he would then smash his hands or feet on the actual bags that he believed did not contain the dangerous spike. Now, the method that I hold in my hand is 100% safe. There's no way that you could get this wrong unless maybe you're a retard. And I don't mean that clinically retarded, I just mean socially retarded. And yet magicians pride themselves on using methods that are legitimately dangerous. Why? So why put yourself in legitimate danger to impress a group of people that are probably going to forget you when the next magician comes around? Worse than that, now you no longer have the opportunity to become the magician you were claiming you were going to be because you're dead. So I think this is a perfect example of what not to do as a magician. Regardless of how dangerous the actual escape might appear to be, make sure that it's always as safe as it could possibly be without any chance of having any harm to you. This often requires more effort than just jumping on the coffin and saying, yeah, that'll hold. Close up, stage, illusion, it doesn't matter. I guess the moral of this video and the message is to not be retarded.
When I see you again.